Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's bonus upload, shall we? Alright folks, normally we start these types of uploads off with the video clip first and then jump into encounter and kind of go on from there. But today we are going to start off with the encounter first. So, today's first encounter. Back in 2018, my girlfriend and I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail in Virginia. We had hiked other parts of the Appalachian Trail north of Virginia, but had never gone this far south. The sections we took ran through George Washington and Jefferson National Forests, from Roanoke County to Giles County. It is one of the more remote parts of the trail, which is exactly what we were looking for. We gathered our gear and made our way to the Virginia Creeper Trail to begin our journey. It was early October, the air was crisp and cool. Perfect hiking weather with beautiful scenery. The majority of the trip was pretty uneventful, just your typical hike, but our last couple of nights is where things got strange. On this portion of the trail, you are supposed to camp on the trail or at a designated shelter. We didn't really want to run into other people and didn't want anyone coming up on us in the middle of the night. We decided to ignore these suggestions and find our own little spot off the trail. After a little searching around, we found a spot a little ways off the trail in the middle of a small clearing. We set up camp, cooked some food, talked for a while, then snuggled up and went to sleep for the night. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I was awoken by my girlfriend shaking me, telling me to get your gun. Someone or something is outside walking around the tent. She told me that she woke up to what sounded like someone right outside of the tent, running a knife or something alongside while circling us. When hiking, I carry a .45 ACP. You never know exactly who you may run into at a remote location. I got the gun out of my pack and then sat silently, listening for any more sounds. After a while, we heard snapping and crunching sounds of someone or something walking in the woods behind the tent. I grabbed the flashlight and silently made my way out of the tent. Our fire had gone out, so it was nearly pitch black. I told my girlfriend to stay put while I checked it out. I didn't flick the flashlight on right away. I waited to hear more noise. After a few moments, the sounds were bipedal. I turned on the flashlight and flooded the area with light. I thought I saw something move behind a tree. I yelled out and told them to go away, that I was armed. I kept the light on my area with my gun drawn and slowly approached the area where I thought I had seen this figure. Then, from my right, I heard what sounded like something running through the woods. I spin and face my light that way, and then from the original spot hear who or whatever was there take off into the woods as well. There's no way I was giving chase. So I returned to the campsite. I ended up sitting guard outside of the tent until darkness turned to daybreak. In the morning, I looked around for signs of who or whatever it was, and I discovered prints in the soft, moist dirt outside of the tent. They weren't mine or my girlfriend's. This freaked me out, as it confirmed someone or something, perhaps more than one, was stalking around our tent. I kept it to myself because I didn't want to freak my girlfriend out any more than she already was. At this point, we're pretty deep in and still had 2 days left. When it came time to set up camp, I found a spot near a cliff where we could place the tent in a small overhang and prevent anyone from coming up behind us. The whole day up until this point, I had this feeling like we were being followed and watched. I had no confirmation of this, as I hadn't seen or heard anything else, but just a gut feeling. We set up camp and made food, then retreated into the tent. I kept the gun right next to me, and I assured my girlfriend that if I slept at all, it would be with one eye open. After a while, she drifted off to sleep, and I stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the woods at night. I was awoken a few hours later, just waiting to see if anything was going to happen. At some point I drifted off. Then I woke up to what sounded like someone or something going through our stuff outside of the tent. I grabbed my gun again and woke my girlfriend up. There was a faint glow from the fire. I could see something silhouette against the tent. There's something out there. I yelled out that I was armed. They stopped and bolted off into the woods. I came out of the tent, gun drawn, ready to shoot. Our stuff was strewn about. I walked to the edge of the woods in the direction of whoever or whatever had fled. There was a creek nearby, and I walked to the edge. There was a small trail running alongside of it. Down the creek, I could see light, maybe a lantern or something flickering. Then I saw 3, I don't know what, emerged from the other side of the woods. I told my girlfriend to start packing up whatever she could, that we were leaving now. We packed up everything of value, left the tent and a few other items, and headed back onto the trail in the middle of the night. I kept hearing what sounded like voices, but not English, off in the woods. It almost sounded like garbled grunts and chirps, if that makes sense. I heard branches snap quite a ways off. I kept looking behind us every few seconds to make sure that nobody was coming up behind us. It was completely nerve-wracking. If something happened, we were still a long way from anywhere, and quite literally on our own. Since we hadn't seen another hiker the entire time we had been out here, I really felt we were in serious danger. We had been walking for quite some time when I heard something in the woods behind us. As we rounded the corner, I turned around and saw something step out onto the trail and just stand there and watch us. It was just as the sun was coming up and barely any light. I couldn't make out any features, just a strange silhouette. I stopped and looked at it for a second and said, "Who are you? What do you want?" They just stood there silently watching us, then turned and ran into the woods. We picked up our pace and kept going, looking back every so often. We didn't see them again, but my gut told me they were still there for quite a ways. We eventually reached the end of the trail and got to where we parked my girlfriend's car, extremely exhausted. We made it out of the woods without becoming a victim of what I believe was feral humans. You know, the other day I had made the comment of how I really do enjoy and am quite freaked out about encounters in Appalachia. Now, I truly do believe that feral humans live throughout the entire United States in the deep woods. I don't know exactly how they live. I think possibly they may be some kind of throwback of a human. Maybe a person or people that reverted back into something that we are not anymore. You know, like if you put a pig, domesticated pig in the woods and let it go, I think within like a month or two, it will turn feral. It'll turn into a hog. I don't know if that's possible with humans, but maybe. Or, I have another thought that maybe these things are some sort of subspecies of human beings that just lived and thrived in our wilderness for so long that they are like Bigfoot and Dogman and crawlers. They see us, we don't see them. I mean, technically, and I don't mean to say it like I don't believe that there are feral humans, because I truly do, because there's been too many sightings of them. But if there is feral human, I mean, they could be standing on like a ledge or anywhere watching us walk by and we'd never know, because that's where they live. They have to hunt with primitive tools. I don't know, it's crazy, and I'm glad these folks made it out. Anyway, on to today's first video clip. Yesterday I shared one of my favorite video clips that I truly do believe may be a Bigfoot running through a field in front of a group of what sounds to be teenagers or maybe young adults. And this video clip is very similar to that one, just in a completely different location. It almost looks to me like Florida. And we all know that the skunk ape is notorious for running through Florida, right? So here's that video clip. You guys decide. All right, guys, like I say all the time, I have no affiliation. These are not my video clips. I didn't film them. I don't know if they're real or not. I'm leaving it up to you guys to decide. The only thing I will say, like I said previous to showing the video clip, is that it's kind of reminiscent of yesterday's video clip when the young adults or teens were filming and wondering exactly what this thing was going through their field. Totally different location, as you can tell. There's palm trees, or what looks to be palm trees in this. That's why I kind of feel like it may be Florida. the Florida skunk ape. But like I say all the time, you guys decide, real or not, and I'll leave it at that. Let's jump into today's second encounter. I was driving home on an isolated road through a mountainous area. It was late and dark, and I honestly could not have told you where I was at the time. All I knew is that I was in Tioga County, Pennsylvania, and I needed to stay on the road that I was on until I finally left the state and hit my home territory of New York. I was in and out of daydream state. You know how it is when you're exhausted and trying to push on. I was so exhausted that even caffeine wasn't giving me what I needed, and I was too cheap to spend money on a hotel. However, when I was approaching a curve, this is where the experience starts. My headlights hit something that looked like a person, except almost double if not triple in size. I had to swerve to avoid it, and I sure the hell woke up. I wasn't sure if I had clipped them or not by the car sliding into the ditch. The first thing I did was get out and make sure that I had not hit somebody. I was thinking, why would there be someone out in the middle of nowhere wearing pitch black clothing? There was no one around, and I was pretty sure that there had been somebody on the road. Actually, I was certain of it. My car was good and stuck. The tires wouldn't grip the mud. I didn't want to call for a tow truck, but it was looking like my only option. I sat in the car and tried phoning out when I was sure I had seen movement. I was hoping it was someone willing to help me, but then I thought it was just my exhaustion playing tricks on my eyes. I shook my head, wondering if it would be a good idea just to sleep right here in the ditch and wait for the tow truck. Then it started to rain heavily. I was really tired, and the sound of the rain was not helping me stay awake at all. Then thoughts of sleep were suddenly gone when the driver's side window was blocked by a drenched furry body of something large. It was walking on two legs, but there was no way it was a human. It stopped and peered into the window. It was so ugly and evil looking. It's the only description that I feel is even appropriate. It was pointing its long wolf-like snout right at me, baring its teeth in a menacing grin like it was smiling at me, as if it was happy I was trapped in this little metal enclosure. Those long yellowish fangs, the worst part was its eyes. There was no soul in them, but they had some sort of supernatural glow. It then ran its claw on my window, which made a scratching sound. It was sadistic and evil. It maintained a stare and grin like it was letting me know there was nowhere I could run. I then noticed another wolf-like creature come out from the downpour, and then another. I don't know how many there was, but I was paralyzed with fear. It seemed like forever, though it was probably only a matter of seconds. But then they instantly disappeared. I looked around hoping that they were gone, and then I wondered why they took off. I soon found out. A pickup truck pulled up behind me, and an old man stepped out, walked up to my driver's side window, and volunteered to pull me out of the ditch. He looked at me and asked if I was all right. I didn't tell him what I had seen. He hooked the chain to my car and quickly pulled me out of the ditch. I thanked him profusely and actually offered to pay him for his trouble, but he refused. I then felt comfortable enough to tell him what had happened to me, and that I had never seen anything like it before. After I described what I had seen, he got a strange look on his face, almost like he had heard this before. I asked him a couple of questions, and he was very dismissive. I was positive that he was aware of what this creature was. That was November of 2020, and I will never forget this. I can only imagine what may have happened to me if that old man hadn't stopped by to my rescue. Tonight's third encounter. My experience happened while I was 16 years old. In rural northern Wisconsin, I was chased by an unknown hairy bipedal creature outside of my childhood home. Up until that day, I had zero fear of the woods. Actually, I spent most of my time out there exploring, and I feared nothing. My parents had a pretty ugly marriage and fought a lot. I felt more at home outside than in the house. On hot nights, I'd take a sleeping bag and sleep on the roof of an old shack on our property. I had seen bear, wolves, all types of things. They were always more afraid of me than I of them. I didn't believe in ghosts, Bigfoot, demons, or even God at that time, actually. I only got lost out there once, when dark fell sooner than I expected. I stayed calm, found the North Star, and I knew if I continued south I'd eventually come across some old railroad tracks near the house. Even the thought of spending the night out there didn't bother me. The thought of my mom's rage when I didn't come home did. It was summer, and I had just turned 16, like I said. My mom had left my dad. Dad worked all the time. My sister was living on her own. Once school was out, it was me and my cat. And this was before the internet and smartphones. We lived on an old dead-end road. Around noon, I took my usual stroll down the long driveway to check the mail. My cat followed me everywhere, and I actually kind of relied on him to give me a heads up if there was a bear or anything close by. A bit of movement behind me as I stood at the mailbox made me aware of something across the road in the trees, but there were pesky deer everywhere. I heard a loud crash, like something very loudly making its way through that brush. It was like every classic horror story. My brain had no capability of thought of anything paranormal or spooky. I simply tucked the mail under my arm and headed into the woods to investigate. My cat followed close behind. I got maybe 10 yards in when I noticed what I hadn't noticed before. There was no noise. Nothing. It was a beautiful June day, and there was not a single bird singing, no insects, no leaves rustling. Absolutely dead silent. At the same time, I registered the silence. I got that eerie feeling of something watching me. I stopped immediately and started scanning the woods for deer. Hunters know what I am talking about when I say you look for a shape of a deer instead of trying to pinpoint them by color. That's when I spotted it. 2 furry brown legs, the top of it concealed by tree branches. My cat hissed. I looked down and he was completely puffed out and his back arched, looking at the same thing I was. I looked back up and the legs had moved, not like a deer, but much like a human. Everything happened at once after that. I dropped the mail, picked up my cat by the scruff and ran. Whatever it was out there was running after me, and I had never ran so fast in my life. I tore up the driveway and into the house, locking the door and grabbing the phone. I called my next-door neighbor, who was the ex-chief of police. He came over immediately with pistol in hand. He checked out the spot I was in and found nothing. I was so hysterical. I was in tears. He stayed with me until I was able to reach my mom and have her come get me. Of course, they thought I was completely high or delusional. I know exactly what I saw and felt. It was broad daylight. I never felt safe in those woods again. I stopped sleeping outside altogether. Alright folks, the second video clip of today is what I know out of New Hampshire. Guy's out in his woods, he's got his cell phone with him and catches what he believes to be a Bigfoot. Once again, I have no affiliation with them, and I leave it up to you guys to decide how you feel about these video clips. Here it is. All right, so I don't know how I feel about that video clip. It's hard, when we see these video clips. There's not a lot of detail. And, I really dislike that statement, someone used a potato camera and this and that. Because if you think about when a lot of these video clips were taken, some were taken back in 2000, the first video clip that I showed you today, 2000. Technology wasn't what it is nowadays. When I caught whatever was running across the trail up where Tom Mezek disappeared, I was a good distance off, and even enlarging it and trying to, figure out what it was still hard. That's why I say I don't know what it was. It could have been a Dogman, a Bigfoot, a bear, which I know bears don't run bipedal down a mountainside, and then drop to all fours and run down another ravine. But anyway, you guys decide on how you feel about this video clip. Today's fourth encounter. Hello everyone, my experience happened October of 2021 in Rochdale, Greater Manchester, United Kingdom. I lived alone after a breakup. I spent most of my time in the evenings upstairs playing video games or watching YouTube. I didn't have much of a social life at the time, and that was okay with me. I had never felt uneasy in my own home up until this time. I would walk into the kitchen at night and grab a drink. My kitchen window looks out of my overgrown garden, which in turn overlooks the woods. It's a rural neighborhood, and it is very quiet at night, which makes it a friendly environment for the wildlife to come out. I often saw fox or deer. At night when the lights are on, I can barely see more than a few feet ahead of the window. It acts almost like a mirror. On this particular evening, a few feet ahead of me, that I could see was all this thing needed to make itself visible to me. I hadn't noticed it until I looked up and out the window after making my drink. There was a bipedal creature, skinny but quite tall with its hind legs, no hair. It sounds ridiculous to mention, but it looks similar to the werewolf Lupine transformed into the Prisoner of Azkaban movie, only much taller and more humanoid. Its mouth was tiny but still protruded, similar to that of a canine. It had no ears from what I could see. It just stood there looking at me with these completely white, tiny eyes. Its head was tilted to the side and its bottom jaw was slightly gaped. I didn't know how long it had been there. I was in the kitchen for about a minute before I even bothered to look out the window. I just froze. You think you can rationalize what to do in a situation like this, but no, I froze with terror. I was thinking to myself to move, but my body felt icy. After 15 seconds or so, even though it felt much longer, I managed to move and ran out of the kitchen. Not daring to take my eyes off this beast. As I did so, its head rotated, following me as I ran to the comforts of my upstairs. After all this time, I still have not gone into the kitchen at night except for a few necessary occasions. I prepare everything I need before it gets dark and I go upstairs for the rest of the evening. If I absolutely need to go into the kitchen, I'll rush in and get out ASAP. You know that feeling you get when all of the lights are turned off before you have to go back up the stairs and you feel like you're going to be chased by some sort of unknown entity? That's the feeling I get when I need to go into the kitchen. And to this day, I know instinctively that the werewolf creature is still watching me. My current boyfriend believes I'm imagining this, but he won't go out there at night when he visits. I've asked few people who I trust to offer me their opinion of this creature, but I know that none of them really, believe me. I have considered moving, but I really do love my home. Alright folks, tonight's final video clip is, I'm assuming someone lost in the woods, or they're in the woods at night. I don't know why. To be quite honest, I don't know why they would go into the woods at this dark of an evening. You know, when I went up to where Tom Mezek disappeared at night one time last year, and I made the video of it. You guys may have remembered it. I was only maybe 300 yards from my car and needed to get out of there right away. Being in the woods is just crazy at night. Anyway, here's this video clip. You guys decide.
What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
Alright folks, let's end this upload with a very strange and terrifying encounter. My experience happened when I was in my late teens. This was not a Sasquatch, and I really hope someone else had a similar experience to shed some light on what I saw. The fear is absolutely paralyzing, and I still think about it to this day. Our house was a rambler style in a rural setting with a deck out the back that had several steps out into the backyard, and then it was woods. We of course had no neighbors. My bedroom at the time was the den that had a sliding glass door that went out to the deck. Our only cat was with me and fast asleep this whole time. We had a dog that was the only other witness to this experience. Just before the morning light, something started to scream outside of the glass door on the deck. I was immediately paralyzed in fear. I can only describe its metallic, extremely loud wailing siren-type scream. It had more than one tone, like an extra vibration, and it was not at all natural, extremely loud. It wailed with intensity and aggression, no pause up or down in tone. So loud, felt like it went on forever. I was sweating and shaking with primal gut fear. I expected someone to wake up in the house, especially my dad, who was an extremely light sleeper, and come rushing in. No one did. The dog went nuts. He was growling and barking. He attacked the curtains and rushed the glass constantly. The whole time, he did not stir this thing at all. It stayed rigid and still against that glass. I felt it was aware of me and wanted my attention. I felt it was aggressive, but I was not totally sure of its intent, and I believe it wanted my attention. I finally managed to lift my head slightly to look at whatever this thing was, and its shape was an average height, but extremely thin. No way this was a cat or any known creature of the woods. I've always said that I was born with a cat in my arms, and that I was probably a cat in my past life, so I know cats. I'm 61 years old now, and I've heard their calls and screams, and this was beyond anything like that. This next part I'm having trouble writing, and I do believe that this was not an earthly creature. I may be dismissed by this. I know it was not normal. This thing was sitting upright, either facing into the glass or away. No features, solid black silhouette, with its ears straight up and long, sitting unnaturally on the top of its head. It almost looked fake. My cat is next to me, sound asleep the whole time. Could this thing have masked itself as something similar or something familiar with me? What about that odd metallic vibration? It was ear-piercingly loud, like it was coming from everywhere. It wailed up and down without stopping like a high-pitched siren. It went on and on for what seemed like forever. I estimate it lasted 5 minutes at least. It started when it was dark outside, and it was gradually getting lighter. I don't remember falling asleep, just that if it was later than everyone was getting up for breakfast, I asked anyone if they had heard anything weird, and of course no one had. Our dog looked haggard and exhausted. I knew this really happened just by the look in his eye. He seemed tired, edgy, and as troubled as I did. After breakfast, the dog and I checked out the deck for proof, but found nothing. He sniffed everywhere frantically. I can't remember if he ran into the woods. I don't think he did, and I was too afraid. I felt like I had been through a terrifying experience. It still disturbs me to this day. I think about it, what it was. My parents lived there for another 40 years, like nothing ever happened, and actually nothing happened again. And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed today's bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and honestly what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.